Man, I done tried this intro like 3 times. I've been watching this channel right here for 10 years plus. But most amazing top 10, talking about the Simpsons predictions that came true. We're just gonna get into it because I've tried this like 3 times already, man.
Did The Simpsons predict Twitter becoming X? Did they know horse meat was going to end up in burgers across the United Kingdom? Does this cartoon predict future events, or is reality forming around The Simpsons? These are terrifying Simpsons predictions that came true. In 1994, The Simpsons had a moment where lunch lady Doris pours assorted horse parts from a giant metal tub labeled assorted horse parts into the school meals at Springfield Elementary. It's a quick gag, just a part of the show's usual weirdness, but in 2013, that throwaway joke became one of the more talked about scenes in the show, and not for a good reason. A bunch of horse DNA was found in beef products in the United Kingdom. People were eating burgers, understandably, believing that there was no trace of horse meat in it. As authorities worked to track down the perps, it turned out this was not just a one-off mistake either. It was a massive fraud. Companies were deliberately passing off horse meat as beef in all kinds of products, from frozen meals to burgers. The whole thing led to product recalls, public outrage, and a serious drop in trust for food companies. The Simpsons had foreshadowed the whole scandal with one random visual gag. Now let's look at a much later.
Hit the like button if y'all remember that, man. We was in school. I was in school when that happened, but hit that like button if y'all remember that.
Episode that is still over a decade old now. Yikes. Season 23, episode 21, Ned and Edna's Blenda Agenda. In this episode, Homer's phone briefly shows an app with a large X as the logo, amongst other more standard-looking social media apps. If you weren't paying attention, you'd totally miss it, which people did back in 2012, but when Twitter rebranded to X in 2023, and someone decided to rewatch season 23 of The Simpsons for some reason, they were likely like, holy crap, Homer has X on his phone. The Simpsons writers didn't predict the exact company or context, but they did nail the idea of an X symbol taking over a major platform. Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter, including ditching the iconic blue bird logo for a bold X as part of his vision to transform the platform. Now, is a company with an X logo really that out there and original? No, but it is interesting that this fictional logo was specifically meant to be a social media app. In the 1995 episode, Lisa's Wedding, Lisa's future was a mix of predictions, some obvious, some way out there. One of the more bizarre moments was when the episode showed librarians being replaced by robots. Back then, the idea of robots in libraries seemed so futuristic, almost impossible. But in 2016, a group of students at a university in Wales debuted a robot librarian named Hugh. Hugh was designed to help library goers by guiding them to books and listening to their requests. Not only did The Simpsons get the idea of robot librarians right, but they also nailed the name, Hugh. And yeah, I'm guessing the university students named their robot after The Simpsons episode specifically, but still, pretty cool. Hugh was not the only piece of futurism predicted in this episode, though. The show also had a shot of a building behind London's Tower Bridge, and it looked exactly like the Shard. But the thing is, this building wouldn't start construction until 2009, years after the episode aired. Was this just a lucky coincidence? Well, considering The Simpsons' track record, I don't know. The Frying Dutchman episode of The Simpsons shows Homer at an all-you-can-eat seafood buffet. Of course, in true Homer fashion, he overdoes it, eating so much shrimp and lobster that he's eventually just kicked out of the restaurant, so he decides to sue for false advertising. Well, years later, a man in Massachusetts, Springfield, Massachusetts, sued the Golden Corral buffet chain for $2 million, claiming false advertising after being kicked out of the restaurant for eating too much. So yeah, he was essentially in the same position as Homer. Oh, and the case even ended in an out-of-court settlement, just like in the episode. The similarity is wild, especially considering the case wasn't some huge media sensation. It was just one guy trying to get back at a buffet that kicked him out for eating too much. I've heard pretty much every one of these Simpsons predictions, but this one's new to me. In The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace from 1998, Homer tries his hand at being an inventor, and during a scene he writes an equation on a chalkboard that seems like just complete gibberish. It's something nobody would ever have thought twice about. That is, if it weren't for the fact that when you break it down, the equation is shockingly close.
They said that math question was real. I don't know, man. I ain't watched The Simpsons in a little minute. Might need to go back and watch it a little bit.
To predicting the mass of the Higgs boson particle, something scientists didn't discover until 2012. The Higgs boson is critical to understanding how particles get mass, and scientists spent decades searching for it. In fact, the equation Homer wrote turned out to be so close to the real thing that Dr. Simon Singh, a British science writer, pointed out the resemblance, saying it almost predicted the mass of the elementary particle. That equation predicts the mass of the Higgs boson. If you work it out, you get the mass of a Higgs boson that's only a bit larger than the nano mass of a Higgs boson actually is. It's kind of amazing, as Homer makes this prediction 14 years before it was discovered, end quote. So yeah, pretty nuts that a cartoon teased at something as complex as a fundamental particle years before it was even discovered. If you're a Simpsons fan, you probably remember Blinky, the three-eyed fish found near the Springfield nuclear power plant. Well, Life, again, decided to copy the show when a real-world version of Blinky showed up in Argentina. Fishermen there caught a three-eyed wolffish in a reservoir that's fed by a local nuclear power plant. Now, of course, the discovery was pretty disturbing. It's fun seeing a three-eyed fish in a light, frothy cartoon full of people with bright yellow skin. It's a bit more concerning seeing toxic fish show up in real life, especially one formed out of polluted water. Fishermen weren't thrilled about it either. Julian Smutt, one of the fishermen, said, "We were fishing and we got the surprise of getting this rare specimen. As it was dark at the time, we did not notice, but then you looked at him with a flashlight and you saw that he had a third eye." The fish was handed over to local authorities for testing. Still don't know exactly what caused the mutation, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say it was the radioactive water. Probably. The latest in the long line of Simpsons episodes fans look back on with added context is the Great Fatsby from season 28. In this episode from 2017, a character who is basically a Simpsons version of Diddy Combs without actually being called Diddy Combs throws an exclusive party where everyone's dressed in white. Looking at these screenshots, it's really hard to believe this episode wasn't just released like last month as a very obvious dig. Now, Diddy's parties were very well known in Hollywood. Not everyone knew about all the darker stuff going on, but the stuff on the surface, like the all-white dress code, some of the celebrities that would show up, all that stuff was pretty common knowledge. So this one may not be as surprising as other stuff on this list, but it may be the most eerie to look back on. Definitely an episode that hasn't aged well. One of the most shocking stories of 2013 was when Edward Snowden leaked information about the U.S. government's surveillance program, revealing that the NSA was spying on its citizens on a massive scale. The whole thing shook people's trust in the government, and the reality hit hard when it turned out that the government was listening to private conversations, tracking online activity, and monitoring just about everything. The crazy part, The Simpsons actually predicted it years before. In The Simpsons movie from 2007, there's a scene where the family is on the run, and Marge says to Lisa, "Oh, Lisa," I'm not even going to try. "Oh, Lisa, it's not like the government is listening to everybody's conversation." Right after, the scene cuts to the NSA doing exactly that, spying on everyone. So yeah, this moment hit a little differently after Snowden's revelations. Here's one of the Simpsons moments that's very weird. Feels like it was destined to happen. In season 2, there's an episode called Brush with Greatness, where Marge gets this letter from Ringo Starr after she paints a portrait of him. After years of waiting, she finally hears back from him, and this gives her the confidence to pursue her art. Sounds like the kind of heartwarming plot you'd expect from a cartoon, but a little too sweet to happen in real life, right? But in May of 2024, something very similar happened, but this time it was another Beatle, Paul McCartney, who responded to a fan. A woman named Adrian from Brooklyn had done a video interview 60 years before declaring her love for Paul McCartney. Fast forward to 2024, and Paul saw the video, responded to it on TikTok and Instagram, and even invited her to a photo exhibition in New York. Before that, he'd also responded to 2 women from Essex who'd sent him a mixtape decades before. Alright, the whole Fox merger situation. If you keep up with the business world, you probably know about the Disney-Fox merger that went down in 2019, but if you go back to 1998, The Simpsons predicted this whole thing. In this season 10 episode, there's an establishing shot of the 20th Century Fox entrance with text below reading a division of the Walt Disney Company. Well, 21 years later, Disney purchased Fox for $71 billion, absorbing massive properties like The Simpsons, Avatar, X-Men, and a whole list of other stuff. Now, this one wasn't super far-fetched, to be fair. Disney is a massive conglomerate. They buy up lots of companies, but that's been happening more in the last decade or so. And the idea of Disney owning something like The Simpsons, which was seen as pretty edgy back then, was kind of unheard of. That's why it was a joke. The Simpsons has always poked fun at corporate culture, but here it was, predicting the exact future of not only the media industry, but itself. What streaming service can you find The Simpsons on now? Disney Plus. With all that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.
Yo, I remember a lot of that, but y'all already know. On to the next video. Y'all hit that subscribe button. I'm not gonna stress it too much. Hit that subscribe button.